Good day, everyone. I hope you feel good or great. By the way, my name is Kyla B. Mariaca, and this is my members Dolly, Dixie, Princess, and Gwen. Now, we have reached the last lesson for this course, which is Environmental Crisis and Sustainable Development. In this lesson, we will focus on environmental crisis and sustainable development, which seems to be two different topics, but in reality, they are interconnected. On this first part of our discussion, we will tackle about the numerous environmental problems that our world is facing now, both natural and man-made catastrophes. Moreover, we will learn the different strategy of different countries in solving these problems. Lastly, we will try to understand the major effects of these problems, such as global warming, climate change, and how such problems lead us to creating sustainable development programs that both benefits man and the environment. And at the end of this lesson, the student should be able to discuss the origins and manifestation of environment crisis, relate everyday encounters with pollution, global warming, desertification, ozone depletion, and many others with a larger picture of environmental degradation, and also examine the policies and programs of environments around the world that address the environmental crisis. Introduction. If you live in metropolitan Manila and travel to work or school every day, the moment you step out of your home, you are exposed to the most serious problem humanity faces today, the deterioration state of the environment. As you walk out of the gate, the fetid smell of uncollected garbage hits you and you go near to the trash bin, curious about what is causing the smell. You see the rotting vegetable, a deadly rat, and a bunch of whatnot packed in plastic. The three ways are already indicative of some environmental problems. The vegetable ought to be added to a compost pile. The rat either buried or burned. To also get rid the lice that might jump into the hair of the children playing nearby. And the plastics wash and recycle because unlike the other two ways, it cannot decompose. Are you familiar with a site like this? It is the point that you recognize the ecological crisis happening around you and how the deterioration of the new environment has destabilized population and species, raising the specter of extinction for some and a lesser quality of life for the survivors and their offspring. Now, let us begin this lesson with a simple activity. Davao de Oro State College has just recently banned the use of single-use plastic inside the campus. Take a moment to ponder about this policy and answer the question in the analysis section. Now, consider the following questions. Number one, what can you say about the no single-use plastic policy of the institution? Number two, how can saying no to single plastic use help our environment? I will give you 1 hour to answer this question. And take a clear photo of your answer and submit it in my messenger. Failed to do, so your score will be deducted. Let us now start our formal discussion on environmental crisis and sustainable development. The world's leading environmental problem, the Conserve Energy Future website lists the following environmental challenges that the world faces today. Number one, the depredation caused by industrial and transportation toxins and plastic in the ground. The defilling of the sea rivers and plastic beds by oil, spills and acid rain. The dumping of urban waste. Number two, changes in global weather patterns like flash flood, extreme snowstorms, and the spread of deserts. And also the surge in ocean and land temperature, leading to a rise in sea level. As the polar ice cap melt, because of the weather, plus the flooding of many lowlands areas across the world. Number 3, overpopulation. Number 4, the world's natural non-renewable resources from oil reserves to mineral to portable water. Number 5, a waste disposal catastrophe due to the excessive amount unloaded to the communities and landfills as well as the ocean, and the dumping of nuclear waste. Number 6, the destruction of million-year-old ecosystem and the loss of biodiversity, destruction of the coral reefs, and massive deforestation that have led to the extinction of particular species and the decline in the number of others. Number 7, the reduction of oxygen and the increase in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere because of the deforestation resulting in the rise in ocean acidity by as much as 150% in the last 250 years. Number 8, the depletion of the ozone layer protecting the planet from the sun's deadly ultraviolet rays due to the chlorofluorocarbons in the atmosphere. Number 9, deadly acid rain as a result of fossil fuel combustion, toxic chemicals from erupting volcanoes, and the massive rotting vegetable filling up garbage dump or left on the street. Number 10, water pollution arising from industrial and community waste reduces seeping into underground water tables, rivers, and seas. Number 11, urban sprawls that continue to expand as a city turns into a megalopolis, destroying farmlands, increasing traffic gridlock, and making smog cloud a permanent urban fixture. You see this in Lesson 8. Number 12, pandemic and other threats to public health arising from waste mixing with drinking water, polluted environment that become breeding ground for mosquitoes and disease-carrying rodents, and this pollution. Number 13, last but not the least, a radical alteration of food system because of genetic modification in food production. Many of these problems are caused by natural changes. Volcanic eruption releases in the atmosphere and lower the world's temperature. The U.S. Geological Survey measured the gas emission from the active Kilauea volcano in Hawaii and concluded that Kilauea has been releasing more than twice the amount of noxious sulfur dioxide gas as the single dirtiest power plant of the United States mainland. And this can lead us to our next reporter.
Good day everyone, my name is Dolores Condes and let me start by saying a few words about man-made pollution. We all know that man-made pollution is a product of causing harm to our environment, specifically causes which comes from burning fossil fuels for transportation, electricity, and industry. Pollution can affect human, economy, and environment into worse conditions. There are three types of man-made pollution, namely air pollution, water pollution, and land pollution. Air pollution is caused by emission of aerosols and other gases. It is a chronic air that can affect our internal to malfunction. Toxic gases is a contamination of indoor and outdoor, such as transportation like bus and motor vehicles, burning of foods, and plastics and chemicals. Second is a water pollution that is caused by waste coming out of coal, copper, and mines flowing out into river and oceans that can destroy ocean life. The risk that we can get if we use from dirty water are severe rashes, poison, cholera, diarrhea, hepatitis, dysentery, typhoid, and polio. Lastly, the land pollution is caused by the toxicity of the soil that can affect our food resources. It is said as a heavy topic which creates a huge impact to our environment and also health of humans, animals, urbanization, agriculture, waste disposal, and industrial waste. The effects that we can get from polluted soil are diarrhea and also long-term chronic effects like cancer. I will show you and present to you some of the cases of man-made pollution all over the world. The country of Saudi Arabia, specifically in Riyadh, which is one of the most polluted cities in the world. Sandstorms combined with combustion exhaust from traffic and industrial waste has led to the World Health Organization or WHO. It threatens even the food supplies, which coal fumes are coming out of industries that contaminates 20% of China's soil, and found heavy metals from mines in the rice lands in Hunan and Zhouzhou. It can possibly cause harmful effects in the human body like cancer. In 2015, Greenpeace India reported air pollution in the country. The worst case that is monitored is there are only 17 national air quality networks covering 89 cities across the continent. WHO warned Nigeria, where 94% of the population is exposed of the air pollution, while Gaborone, the capital of Botswana, is the 7th most polluted city in the world. The causes of air pollution are from the emission of aerosols and toxic gases from tons of garbages, diesel-fueled electric generators, burning woods, petrochemical plants projected to quadruple by 2030. Another case in South Africa is said that the pollution affects the atmospheric circulation system that controls everything from wind and temperature to rainfall across huge swaths of region. The transport of air pollution in stratosphere is the Asian monsoon. It is also mentioned that the aerosol is tagged in culprit in changing rainfall patterns in Asia and Atlantic Ocean. The climate disruption have similarly caused drought all over Asia and Africa. There were over 50,000 of river in China from the past 20 years, and in the survey of 2013, 28,000 of these rivers had disappeared, result of climate change, uncontrolled urban growth, and industrialization. According to the article in Scientific American, they blame that the pollution for contributing more than 500,000 premature deaths each year at the cost of hundreds of billions of dollars. In 2010, there were 223,000 lung deaths caused by air pollution. In Indonesia and Malaysia, they also put the forest into fires, and mortality that can also cause air pollution due to its released toxic gases. The cause of destroying sea life is a waste coming from coal, copper, and gold mines flows out into the rivers and oceans, causing the living organisms to die. For an example, the biggest copper in Malanchkan in India released high levels of toxic heavy metals into water streams, while in China, the tailings from operations of the Shanxi Miankao Ecological Mining Ltd. That produced 12,000 tons of gold per year that cause pollution and safety problems. The critical conditions in China is said as the toxic byproducts of production processes are being produced much more rapidly than the earth can absorb. Meanwhile, for over a century, coal mines in West Virginia that pump chemical-laden wastewater can cause undrinkable state of water. They also cause people sick, have rare cancer, kidney stones, and premature deaths. Another fact is that it can result into a congenital disabilities and worse, shorter life expectancy. It has been the poor who are mostly severely affected by these environmental problems. Yes, it is true, because poverty puts them at a disadvantage by having lack of the resources, especially healthcare, safe areas, healthy food, and other necessities. Yale University in United States, where a research team studied the areas with high levels of pollution, observed that a dangerous compound that can be found in air are mixed on fine particles, which is dangerous as we breathe into it. In India, there are also studies that are found where 46% of adults health in Delhi and 56% in Calcutta have impaired lung function due to air pollution. Also in worst case in China, where raised the concerns over food security, were found toxicity of the soil. There are cases also in China on the year 2006 where 160 acre of land in Shina, China was poisoned by cadmium, a heavy metal of considerable toxicity that can damage almost organ systems. That caused 2 people died and 150 are known poisoned, causing the entire village to abandon. Hong Kong faces the same problem as well as it stated. In 4 million people, 37% of the population live in the slum communities in metropolitan Manila. The threats of climate change, hazardous location, poor air solution and solid waste management, weak disaster risk management, limited coping strategies of household are the problem of urban environment. Health environment truly deepens poverty and vulnerability according to Marife Ballesteros because this can lead into illness and dangerous necessities like dirty water and poisonous food. Another problem is that the main transportation system is the bus that use diesel fuel and causes environmental pollution problems. Center for Science and Environment in Delhi, India says two-wheelers form staggering 75% to 85% of the traffic in most Asian cities, which is true. The motorbikes produce more smoke, carbon monoxide, hydrocarbon, and particulate matter than the gas-only 4-stroke engines found in newer motorcycles. Another fact is that these vehicles like tricycle, bus, jeepneys command a lower price because of their durability. And of course, it is affordable. Yet, the negative side of the vehicle, they release 4 times the toxic pollution as the buses that can really put our environment health at risk. Finally, I would like to raise briefly the issue of man-made pollution where we really need to educate ourselves of every certain issues in our surroundings to be able to, for us to reduce the pollution such as proper segregation, using reliable, safe, and environmental friendly appliances and vehicles, and also being a smart and responsible person as well.
The catch-up effect is a theory that all economies will eventually converge in terms of per capita income due to the observation that underdeveloped economies tend to grow more rapidly than wealthier economies. In other words, the less wealthy economies will literally catch up to the more robust economies. The catch-up effect is also referred to as the theory of convergence. So now, we must understand what is the catch-up effect. The catch-up effect or theory of convergence is predicated on a couple of key ideas. One is the law of diminishing marginal returns, the idea that as a country invests and profits, the amount gained from the investment will eventually decline as the level of investment rises. Each time a country invests, they benefit slightly less from that investment. So, returns on capital investments in capital-rich countries are not as large as they would be in developing countries. This is backed up by the empirical observation that more developed economies tend to grow at a slower, through a more stable, rate than less developed countries. According to the World Bank, high-income countries average 1.6% gross domestic product or GDP growth in 2019 versus 3.6% for middle-income countries and 4.0% GDP growth in low-income countries. Underdeveloped countries may also be able to experience more rapid growth because they can replicate the production methods, technologies, and institutions of developed countries. This is also known as a second mover advantage because developing markets have access to the technological know-how of the advanced nations. They often experience rapid rates of growth. Although developing countries can see faster economic growth than more economically advanced countries, the limitations posed by a lack of capital can greatly reduce a developing country's ability to catch up. Historically, some developing countries have been very successful in managing resources and securing capital to efficiently increase economic productivity. However, this has not become the norm on a global scale. Everything we do, from the food we eat to the electricity we use, affects the world around us, but it wasn't always the way. The Industrial Revolution changed the way that we created everything from food and energy to sanitation and manufacturing technologies. Apart from the way we study, amount of do my paper, messages from students to experts did not decrease even that time. How has industrialization impacted the environment, and what can we do in the future to reduce these environmental impacts? The Industrial Revolution started sometime in the middle of the 70s, when the world's population had finally started recovering from the deaths of the Black Plague in the 30s that wiped out more than 75 million people. The planet's population exploded, reaching 1 billion by 1800s and then doubling again by 1926. By the beginning of the 21st century, it had grown again to 6 billion. It was coal that shifted the balance of power. Using coal as a power source changed the way that we look at industry, from energy generation to manufacturing. We've been using coal since the 30th century, but it wasn't until the 80s that industrialization took off. But then, we weren't thinking of the potential impact of burning coal and other fossil fuels to power our new equipment and machinery. We were thinking of growing as much, as fast, and as far as possible. It's only in recent years that we've started accessing the kind of impact that we've had on the environment as a direct result of this exponential growth. There are 4 primary impact points when it comes to industrialization: air, water, soil, and habitat. The biggest problem is air pollution, caused by the smoke and emissions generated by burning fossil fuels. The United States EPA regulates more than 80 different toxins that can be found in industrial pollution, from asbestos and dioxin to lead and chromium. In spite of these regulations, industries are among the worst generators of air pollution in the world. Water pollution is also a problem. In this area, specifically in regions where factories are built next to natural water resources. These toxins can come in a variety of forms: solid, liquid, or gaseous, and they can all end up contaminating the local water supplies. Even landfills and other waste disposal areas can leach toxins into the local water supply, leading to water pollution as in the case of River Nile. Soil contamination is another problem that goes hand in hand with industrialization. Lead is the most common form of soil contamination, but other heavy metals and toxic chemicals can also leach into the soil and in turn contaminate any crops that grow there. Finally, industrialization has led to dramatic habitat destruction. Forests are cut down for their lumber that upsets local ecosystems and leads to plant and animals extinction if the species are unable to relocate or adapt to their new surroundings. Now that we realize what an impact the Industrial Revolution has had and it is still having on the environment, what can we do to fix it? There are 2 possible approaches that both factories and legislators can take to help reduce the impact of industrial pollution. First, industries can reduce their reliance on a product that is causing pollution. One good example is removing lead from gasoline in the 1970s. We've lowered our dependence on lead, which reduced the amount of this heavy metal being leached into the surrounding environment. The other option is to treat industrial waste to remove toxic components so that the rest of the waste can be disposed of safely. It isn't always easy, and it does require that each factory implements the proper procedures to purify or cleanse their waste byproducts. However, it can help reduce the soil, air, and water pollution being produced by these facilities and also help in conservation of natural resources. Urbanization is the transformation of an occupied or sparsely occupied land into densely occupied cities. Urban areas can grow from increases in human populations or from migration into urban areas. Urbanization often results in deforestation, habitat loss, and the extraction of water from the environment, which can decrease biodiversity and alter species ranges and interactions. Human activities in urban areas such as the burning of fossil fuels and industrial waste also increases pollutants in the environment that can affect the health of humans and other species. Urbanization can impact the Earth system in a variety of ways, including: first one is causing habitat loss and deforestation, which can decrease species, populations, ranges, biodiversity, and alter interactions among organisms. Second, the evolution of life cycles and traits that help species survive and reproduce in disturbed or altered ecosystems. For example, some bird populations living in urban environments have altered their beak shape to be able to more effectively eat the seeds in human-made bird feeders. Third, the transmission of diseases. Humans living in densely populated areas can rapidly spread diseases within and with the ease and volume of transportation among populations. Fourth, increasing the transport of invasive species, either intentionally or by accident, as people travel and import and export supplies in and out of cities. Urbanization also creates disturbed environments where invasive species often thrive and outcompete many species or native species. For example, many invasive plant species thrive along strips of land next to roads and highways. Fifth, increasing regional temperatures. The use of asphalt and other dark-colored materials in urban areas increases the amount of sunlight absorbed. This creates urban heat islands, whereby cities experience higher temperature than surrounding areas. 6. Paving land with concrete can increase water runoff, increasing erosion, and decreasing soil quality. This can also decrease water quality by increasing sediment and pollutants in rivers and streams. Lastly, changing how much and how fast water cycles through the biosphere and atmosphere, trees and other plants return a significant proportion of precipitation to the atmosphere via a process called transpiration. Thus, the loss of plant productivity and biomass decreases the amount of water cycling through the biosphere and atmosphere. So now, let's tackle what would be a society or a developed society must have. First, it must have a provision for the poor jobs in the industrial sector. Second, a provision to public transport system that can accommodate the people in our society. A provision for the cheap food, cheap food that people can afford. Provision in modernized agricultural sector, complete equipments and technologies, and modified crops like corn, rice, and all the agricultural crops here in our society and environment. Lastly, catching up is a solution. Yes, it is a solution in our economical growth on how that our economic will grow. But let us consider or don't forget to consider that our environment also needs growth. And that will be all. Thank you.
Protests around the world. Headlines about extreme weather events. Scientists and public figures calling for actions. And governments uniting in the search for solutions. Climate change is a global issue, and we must work together to save our world. But what exactly is climate change? Our planet's climate has changed throughout history, alternating between ice ages and warmer periods. Earth has been through at least 5 major ice ages, with the last one ending nearly 12,000 years ago. So if the climate has always changed, why is climate change such a big issue today? Since the start of the Industrial Revolution in 1760, Earth's average temperature has risen faster than ever before. This effect is known as the global warming, and it's caused by the increase of greenhouse emission from human activity. Greenhouse gases occurs naturally on our planet, but human activities such as burning of fossil fuels, agriculture, deforestation, and the discomposition of waste in landfills have increased the amount of greenhouse gases dramatically. Greenhouse gases act like a blanket around Earth, trapping the heat from sun's rays. This is called the greenhouse effect. Thanks to this effect, Earth has just the right temperature for life to thrive on it, unlike other planets in our solar system. However, if the greenhouse effects become too strong, it starts to cause issues. The increased temperature we experience now are causing ice in the Arctic and Antarctica, as well as glaciers and snow around the world to melt. The water created by the melting ice pours into the oceans, causing sea levels to rise. This puts islands into the danger of disappearing, especially those in the Pacific and Caribbean regions. Rising sea levels are also causing devastating flood in every country like China, Indonesia, Philippines, Malaysia, and Thailand. These floods are not only a direct hazard to humans, but can also destroy crops and farms used to feed the population. Another effect of the rising temperatures is that ocean warm-up evaporate faster than normal, increasing the occurrence of severe storms and heavy rainfall. Global warming is making more extreme, bringing longer droughts and heat waves. The loss of soil moisture and the high temperatures during a drought increase the risk of wildfire too. The high temperature both on land and our ocean affects Earth's delicate ecosystem. Many animals are forced to migrate to other areas to survive, while others are losing their habitat and dying. Can we do anything to stop the effect of climate change? Climate change has already reached a point that humanity has never experienced before. However, the future of our planet is in our hands. Communities must make smart decisions and tackle these issues with environmentally friendly actions. Some solutions to limit global warming include switching from burning fossil fuels to renewable and greener energy sources like solar, hydroelectric, or wind energy, reducing the emissions caused by industry and transportation. By investing in greener technology and limits the deforestation of land and investing in more space-efficient form of agriculture like vertical farming, these are all big solutions. But there are also things that you can do at home. For example, recycling, composting your organic waste, eating more veggies, and fewer meat products, saving electricity, and buying things that last longer or can be reused. People around the world are working together to innovate, engineers, and develop solutions for the issue of climate change. Bhutan is the world's most carbon-negative country. Costa Rica has also achieved 99% renewable energy, and China is now the world leader in the wind power. Climate change is a global issue, and our future depends on the actions we take today.
Global warming is the long-term warming of the planet's overall temperature. Scientists believe that the use of fossil fuels has begun to heat the climate, and the use of chemicals has damaged the ozone layer. The burning of fossil fuels release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide is one of the greenhouse gases that trap the sun's heat. Greenhouse gases serves the useful function of preventing the escape of all sun's energy into space. Without them, the Earth would be cold and lifeless. Some scientists fear that the atmosphere now has too much greenhouse gases. CO2 emissions have increased 50% since the 1970s. Scientists believe that the increase in CO2 levels causes the atmosphere to trap too much heat, so temperature have been gradually rising. Many people disagree with the theory of global warming. Some say the temperature rise may be due to natural processes. Others say that the temperature have not gone up and they fall within a normal range. In 1977, 182 countries signed the Kyoto Protocol to reduce greenhouse gases following the 1932 United Nations Earth Summit, where a framework convention for climate change was finalized. Kyoto Protocol, also known as Kyoto Accord, is an international treaty among industrialized nations that sets mandatory limits on greenhouse gas emissions. The protocol set targets but left it to be the individual countries to determine how best they would achieve these goals. While some countries have made the necessary move to reduce their contribution to global warming, the United States, the biggest polluter in the world, is not joining the effort. The Kyoto Protocol intention is to jumpstart global effort to limit the emissions of the greenhouse gases that warm the Earth. Carbon dioxide, which is a major product of burning fossil fuels such as coal and oil, is the greenhouse gas people are most worried about. The United States hasn't become part of the agreement because it considers a problem the fact that several major developing nations, including India and China, are not required to reduce emissions under the agreement. Developing countries lack the funds to implement the protocol's guidelines, as many of them need international aid to get things moving. A 2010 World Bank report has concluded that protocol only had a slight impact on the reducing global emissions, in part because of non-binding nature of the agreement. Paris Accord. The follow-up treaty to the Kyoto Protocol is the Paris Accord, negotiated by 195 countries in December of 2015. It seeks to limit the increase in the global average temperature based on targeted goals as recommended by scientists. The Paris Accord set out global framework to avoid dangerous climate change by limiting global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius and pursuing efforts to limit it to 1.5 degrees Celsius. It also aims to strengthen countries' ability to deal with the impacts of climate change and support them in their efforts. Unlike the Kyoto Protocol, which has predetermined CO2 emission, limits per country, the Paris Accord provides more leeway for countries to decide on their national targets. It largely passed an international legislation because it emphasizes consensus building, but it is not clear whether this agreement will have any more success than the Kyoto Protocol. Social movements have a better success working together with some pressure on their governments to regulate global warming. In South Africa, communities engage in environmental activism to pressure industries to reduce emissions and to lobby parliament for the passage of pro-environmental laws. Across the Atlantic in El Salvador, local officials and grassroots organizations from 1,000 communities push for crop diversification, a reduction of industrial sugarcane production, the endangered sea species from the devastating effects of commercial fishing, the preservation of lowlands being eroded by deforestation up in rivers and consistent release of water from nearby dams. Universities also participate with governments in producing attainable programs of controlling pollution. The University of Chicago's Energy Policy Institution sent teams to India to work with their government, offices, business, and communities in coming up with viable ground-level projects that strike a balance between urgently need economic growth and improve air quality. When the local alliance between states, schools, and communities are replicated as a national level, the success becomes doubly significant. In Japan, population pressure forced the government to work with civil society groups, academia, and political parties to get parliament to pass a blizzard of laws, 14 passes at once, in what became known as the Pollution Diet of 1970. The Pollution Diet of 1970 introduced 14 laws designed to enforce supervision of the issue and begin changes. While these laws did not solve the overall problem, they did represent the start of Japan's journey to where it is today. A new approach was adopted to convince both the scientific and business communities of the huge profit potential in resolving environmental issues. This regulation did not eliminate environmental problems, but today, Japan has some of the least polluted cities in the world. The imperative now is for everyone to set up these kinds of coalition on a global scale. For this point, when governments are hesitating fully committing themselves to fight pollution, and when international organizations still lack power to enforce anti-pollution policies, social coalition may be the only way to reverse this worsening situation. We people can also contribute in reducing global warming by recycling materials. This aims to cut down the amount of carbon dioxide released in the environment. If you even recycle half of the waste produced at home, you can save up to 2,000 pounds of CO2 every year. Drive less. Air pollution is one of the major factors that lead to an increase in greenhouse gases. Minimize the use of cars and make use of public transportation. Try walking or biking whenever possible. Plant trees. Deforestation plays an important role in global warming and climate changes. Planting trees is helpful as they absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and regulate climate.
Perhaps no issues forces people to think about their role as citizens of the world than environmental degradation. Every person, regardless of his or her race, nation, or creed, belongs to the same world. When one looks at an image of the world, he or she will realize that he or she belongs to one world, a world that is increasingly vulnerable. In fight against climate change, one cannot afford to simply care about his or her own backyard. The carbon dioxide emitted in one country, they may severe effect on the climate of another. There is no choice but to find global solution to this global problem. And that's all for today's discussion, and I hope that you learned a lot from this group. Thank you very much.